Hello, welcome to another Electric Bastionland deep dive with me, Chris McDowell, and this is the fourth one now, so I've officially gotten too cozy, and I've been working on small things like not talking like a maniac and not whipping my chair around so that it bangs the webcam and it shakes. So I thought we've had three warm-ups now, let's do it properly. I've already spent 1 minute introducing myself when you've obviously already seen this before. We're going to see if we can do 60 failed careers, because there's 60 left, and I've gone into some detail on some of the previous ones, but really there's going to be a bit less to say as we go forward. There's going to be ones that are notable and ones that are interesting stories, but obviously there are kind of patterns to how these were written. There's repetition, as I've confessed to before, so I don't want to spend every week telling you the same things about how I came up with this career by following the same method as I've done before. So we're going to see if we can do over 60 in an hour. I suspect if we go just over an hour, I don't know. We did 10 the first week, 20 the second week. Doing the remaining 60 sounds ridiculous, but I think if I can stick to one a minute, and if I can gloss over some of them and say, yeah, this one's fine. Cool, audio's fine, good to know. Hello everyone. You're all here to witness this pivotal moment when I fail to do 60 in 60 minutes. Yeah. Welcome to history, people. So, let's see. Oh, no me. Where are we? There we go. There's me. So, last time we got to page 114, which is the newspaper intern. Let's go big. Okay. So, by my clock, it's 21:03. I need to get this knocked out by 22:00, so I'm going to be quick on some of them. This one, I love the fact that you've got, I said before about Alex Art having lots of little hooks in the background, but this one in particular, I love all the newspapers in the background. The one that I really like is this one at the sort of the above her head to the right, which says, so there's lots of newspaper headlines. One of them just says, don't, no, don't, no, 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 don't you dare, no, 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 which is a solid newspaper headline. Obvious references here are these sample names. I think they were based off newspaper editors. I think Gurney is to do with The Guardian. But yeah, this is potentially one of the more powerless careers you could get, because Notepad is pretty poor as far as opening equipment goes. And I've definitely had someone have a Notepad, a flask of very strong coffee, and what did they have? I think they had a paperboy. So, nothing even resembling a weapon. But yeah, that was a decision I made. I thought sometimes we want to have people that don't start with a weapon, because it's not necessarily a game about that. Rural tax collector. A real different take on what I pictured for Deep Country. Alex's vision of Deep Country, which I guess is now the official vision of Deep Country, is a little bit more desolate and huge and open than perhaps I had originally thought. I think it might be to do with the vision of the countryside in the UK is very, I think of it as, even though you've got big, Lake District, Peak District, these big huge spans of space, they feel like very intimate closed spaces to me. Whereas if I were projecting, I would say that maybe the American view of the wilderness is a bit more open. So yeah, this huge desert is definitely very different. And I like the yellow of the sky here is not something I would have chosen, but the contrast to the grey of a bastion sky, or if you can even see the sky at all, this bright yellow immediately puts you in Deep Country. And yeah, this is one of the more, one of the repeating things you're likely to get are these animals. So you've got Shaggy Dog, which I've seen in a couple of games. And what do you hate most about Bastion? So I don't always like to project things that the players have to have their character believe in, But here you're getting a hook straight away. So your character hates pigeons. So you've got to run with that now. You know, I've said before that I wanted to have the background not be too prescriptive. But when it comes to something like you hate pigeons, I'm happy to kind of take a punt and say, yeah, okay, deal with it. I'm not telling you something huge about your character. This is a thing you can run with. Academic debater, one of the more obvious set of sample name references here. Strawman, Slipper, Hominem, and Peel. I'll give you 10 seconds to guess them while I talk about something else. Yeah, this career was quite early on. It was in there. I just liked the idea of a professional debater, really, as being something you could be in Bastion. And, you know, the debate is the clue there to the names. So strawman fallacy, slippery slope fallacy, ad hominem fallacy, and appeal to authority, or appeal to I'm not a debater, but it's another fallacy. Appeal to emotion, maybe. And yeah, it's quite open. I like the idea that you can get a character that just knows how to debate something forever, like formal wear. I can see that being useful. I really can. So questions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to stop every while. Let me think. Every 20 careers. I'm going to see if I can get through to number 60, and then I'll stop and look back at the questions. I will keep an eye on them in case there's anything that particularly grabs me, but I'm going to try and be disciplined on the questions this time. Let's do it every 10. We'll wait till we get to 50, and then we'll stop for questions. But yeah, good to see lots of people in the chat. I'm glad that Patrick Stewart has stopped hijacking my thing, which is to say the thing that I made. And I'm now claiming talking about it as my thing as well. So no, seriously, don't stop talking about it, please, please. Please keep talking about it. It's important. Associated Burglar. I love this piece, and again, very different to what I was expecting, but I love it. The parrots on the wire in the top left, especially good, and yeah, it's slightly unfortunate that you can end up with a character, and you used to target orphanages. So not many of the failed careers are like outright terrible ethically, but saying that, you know, you burgled only sanctioned properties, so it's kind of a Bastionese take on morality. If it's sanctioned that this orphanage needs to be robbed, then, you know, either you do it or someone else does. Retail therapist. Now, if you listen to me talk to Alec on the audio commentaries, the thing that I love about this is that apparently, I don't know whether this is just for Alec or America in general, the phrase retail therapist isn't especially well known. Sorry, not retail therapy. The idea of retail therapy, of you go shopping and you undergo some retail therapy, you go and buy yourself a load of stuff to feel better about yourself. It's probably not that great. But he took this very literally, and you ended up with them actually being a therapist, which I love. And the thing that I love about this is you've got a character that looks extremely bored sitting in front of this crazy scene with this huge monstrosity. I took this statue as being like a sort of living alien guy holding a diamond. I guess you could read him as a statue, but I just love how bored she looks with her life. And, you know, the neon lights outside. I spoke last week a little bit about the kind of cyberpunk thing coming in. And again, that's not something I would have chosen, but I love that it's there. And yeah, more little bits of world building in who is your best client. It's the second reference to a deep country king. This is the problem. You read through this and I'm like, oh, I've only got about 20 ideas, and I just change them ever so slightly each time. But yeah, I like that if you get a couple of roles that sync up, you could end up owing money to a deep country feral king, but you also have a deep country feral king who's your client, and I take them as two different kings, and then have some kind of warring kings in deep country kind of thing going on. Apprentice sweep. It didn't take us long. It took us 10 minutes to get into the first Red Dwarf reference of the day. but it's in here somewhere. The I guess no, it's actually not. I'm thinking of a different career. There was one about repairing soup machines or something, and I think the gruel chutes are, again, the gruel well. I keep going back to the gruel well, and it sounds very much like the gruel well is a place that could exist in Bastion. And yeah, fake pistol is something that appears a few times as well, because I also love that idea that you could start the game with a fake pistol, and that's your weapon. Sky Trooper was originally Shock Trooper. And I changed it because it sounded a little bit too... I think it sounded too cool. Whereas Sky Trooper sounds cool, it also sounds slightly ridiculous. So it sets you up for the level of character you're going to get, because, yeah, you are going to be pretty cool. You've got a cool uniform. You've got glider wings. And, you know, your picture looks pretty badass. But you don't really have that much useful stuff. You're mostly all show. You know, your academy closed down after graduation, so you were part of a crack team. And you know that someone else from your team is going to show up in the game. Some people have asked me, they've noticed that things like, there's a few little instances where the debt holder on a career sort of lines up with the one before. So we had Apprentice Sweep on the last page. And then here the debt holder is a Titan Chimney Stacks. And they've said, oh, is it out of sync? Is that meant to be on the sweep? And it's not, because I didn't want them to... If you were a chimney sweep, I wanted you to have something different as your debt holder. I didn't want that to be your whole deal. So I deliberately put it on something different. I should have shuffled them all around, because it's now plainly obvious that I've used some of them for inspiration, for ideas. But if I'm being generous to myself, I could say I'm demonstrating how you can use these as the starting point for other ideas. Herbalist. Is herbalist too bad as a pun? Does that go too far? It's quite bad. So yeah, basically the concept was I wanted kind of an urban druid, and the names are, I think, to do with things to do with smoking. Potentially we've got Rizzler, Zipper, something to do with thiols. Is like a thiol a compound or a aromatic thing? I don't know what a jalapa is. No idea. But these were apparently, at the moment, I've got a vague memory of doing something to do with smoking weed as my thing here. Oh, and look, I've just noticed there's a comma instead of a full stop at the end here. So, yeah, some typos made it into the final book. I hate to tell you, but hopefully, if that's as bad as they get, I can live with a comma instead of a full stop. So yeah, the herbalist is kind of weird, because Patrick was flaming me on Twitter, if that's still a thing people say, about how I make a big deal about I want to put something in the game, I put it in as a piece of equipment. But then I have got some careers where you just get a weird ability, and this is one of them. So all you get are weird abilities. So you get your Saber. Saber's a bit generous, but again, I think I'm going for a kind of the druid kind of image. 3 doses of herbs. And yeah, when you get herbed up, you can do something to the walls and something to the floors. And this is kind of this career is a little bit of a nightmare for the conductor. I imagine for some, if they're a brand new conductor to the game, having the player go around and sort of licking a wall and saying, yes, what was the original purpose of this building? Then you've got to come up with it pretty quick if you haven't already got it, or the last thing that was cooked here. So yeah, they're a little bit silly. But again, indulgences here. Under labourer. This was called something different. I think it was like the tunnel clearer or something, but then I had the tunnel stray later on as a name, so I didn't want to have the same word repeated. So under labourer. Cutver, Trunch, Bore, Ducton. These sound like things to do with tunnels. I think, are they to do with parts of drilling equipment? It could be. Yeah, this image is great. I like anything that kind of shakes up the perspective a bit, because to give you an example, when I think of the images in Electric Bastionland, I think of this kind of straight on with a crowd scene, which I do like, or this one here where you've got a central figure in the background. But when you go through, there's a lot of variety here. Like the Apprentice sweep, you've got this kind of, I think I'm stealing this from Ben Milton in the commentary, said something like it's a heroic shot, but it's not a heroic thing. And yeah, I love this kind of weird angle we've got here. So again, the underlabourer, similar to the herbalist in the sense that they've got a few weird abilities rather than equipment. You've got the famously faintly magnetic, which was in the original Into the Odd. Yeah, and you've got an example of the thing that I tried to be restrained with doing this. One of the things you can get is you have severe agoraphobia, so you are deprived whenever outdoors. So there's a few times when you get something and it means you're deprived in a certain situation. So the Fashionista is a good example where you are deprived if you dress without making a statement. And it just means that you can't recover your HP. So it's not going to kill you, but it will make you more likely to die in that situation. So it creates a kind of panic where you feel uncomfortable and you're not going to die of agoraphobia. But when things get tough, you're going to want to get underground. And I think that works quite well. And the sort of the words here are to do with the underground as well. So I think they link in with the touchstones of the underground later on. So things like darkness, space, time, maze, connection, and cruelty are all keywords of the underground. And then number 50, one of the famed first batch of images that came in, and it's in the top left of the framed images on my wall. And I've said before, this might be my favourite one, potentially just because when I first saw it, I loved it so much. And it really highlighted that Alec was able to do something that looked different to what I expected, but looked perfect for where it was going. And the Science Mystic, I didn't know, it was kind of silly. I was just thinking like the sort of the old D&D prestige class, the Mystic Theurge, I think, where you were like a wizard and a cleric, and apparently I think it was awful. But I was like, yeah, well, let's see, could you have like what would be the modern equivalent of that? Someone who's a mystic, but also a scientist. And what's interesting about this one, I think, is you've got like the herbalist who has these weird abilities, and they work, you know, they've got almost like spell-like abilities. And the underlabourer, you've got the secret of time and all this stuff. So just by being underground, you've picked up these weird sort of semi-magical abilities. But the Science Mystic, who looks awesomely mystical, like some kind of tech wizard, nah, you don't have anything. You've just got a magnet or a mechanical hand. So you know, it's big science, small mystic, and it's up to you to work out. It's up to you to bring the mystic element. You know, if you want to use this magnet to try and divine the truth, then go for it. So that's 10 careers in just over 10 minutes. So I'm going to take a quick pause for some questions. Let's see. So what we got? So Rithuan asks, I'm aware that none of these are showing in the chat box. That's cool. Rithuan asked a while ago, what's the story behind all the Titans' corpses in Bastion or Deep Country? There is no story. You can ask Alec what that means. That was something that he put in as kind of he sort of ran these past me as like motifs. So one of the motifs for the Deep Country was a sort of spider web type thing. Sort of like cobwebs, like a house that's been abandoned. And I was like, yeah, that's great. And another one was like these fallen statues. And it just kind of makes sense for like a decaying place that's getting worse, you know. And I like that it happens so often. So like just having one there is kind of novel, but apparently these things are everywhere, and I quite like that idea. But yes, the associated burglar is perfect. Yeah, Alec is just good at putting weird shit in his pictures. That's true. Why is the spot colour yellow and not one of the more popular colours like red or blue? That's from Patrick Stewart. Well, Patrick, you tell me. You used yellow for Silent Titans, and that seemed to do all right. So I used yellow because one of the things is because it's a less popular colour. I just wanted it to look different. And in Into the Odd, I had that red and black cover, so I didn't want to use red again. I thought about blue, but blue felt a bit cold, and when I have black and white and blue, to me it kind of looks a little bit cold, and like almost like it's a horror element sort of coming in, and that didn't feel quite right. So I had yellow as the colour of like electricity, electric lamps. It's also kind of quite a weird colour. It can feel a little bit sickly. It can feel like warm and comforting, and yeah, as you can tell, I also just like the colour a lot. Yeah, Morkborg is the other one. There's a lot of yellow going on at the moment. I thought I was like going to really stand out on the shelf, but everyone's had the same idea apparently. But yeah, Coal Gum, Alchemagician. I need to go through and check how many references to gum there are. There are a lot of gums in there. Yeah, right. Let's crack back on. No time for waffling on. Right, so let's do it. Front of house host. You were the face of a company. Now you're a face without a company. I can't remember why I gave them a knife and an apple. I think it just felt right to have an apple that you could bring out at an appropriate moment. But again, lots of silly little tricks. Being able to do an accent, having a ridiculous haircut, knowing anybody's name just by looking at them. So I've clearly broken away from the idea of having just items. And I think if you're doing this many, you kind of got to. I think it's having this many careers and having to fill out this much stuff, it's a blessing and a curse, because it means you get creative. Because if I've just done 20, I probably would have just done them all with items and objects because I could. But when you can't do that without repetition, it probably did drive some of the more creative backgrounds here and some of the more interesting items. Critter Catcher, yes, somebody asked me in a previous week, is this a Pokemon thing? Yes, it's absolutely a Pokemon thing. In the sense that I just liked the idea of having someone that goes around and catches bugs. I think there was, again, if I'm not giving credit to Patrick for something, I'm giving credit to Arnold Kemp at Goblin Punch. And he had some sort of Critter Catcher style class out there for his Glog system, and it was just really cool. And I just liked the idea of you're not just, it's not the druid with the dire wolf or the sort of bear or like the fucking cool animal. You've got some kind of little, you're interested in more in bugs, and you could be that you catch cats or snakes, but it's more about the little critters rather than a big beast. Bronx is almost certainly a reference to Brock. Foggy Eric Nickel, I've got no idea. I'm afraid not. These weapons were kind of meant to be like kind of JRPG weapons, I guess, that a JRPG protagonist would have. So a boomerang is obvious, an old halberd, the wooden sword, scythe, brass knuckles. Oh, Foggy is, yeah, okay. Fizding points out very clearly that Foggy is Misty. Yeah. Eric? If you're asking me to name gym leaders from Pokemon, I have to stop after Brock and Misty, about as far as my memory goes. There was like an electric army guy. And what was the guy? Was it Gary, the rival guy? Okay, someone else can decode that cipher. Practicing Chemist. Names here: Zastra, Kraber, Smix, and Sunjin. Zastra is AstraZeneca, the pharmaceuticals company, and Smix, GlaxoSmithKline. Lieutenant Surge, yeah. Surge, Eric Nickel. No, anyway, we're done with that. It's in the past. You guys can work that out. So, Practicing Chemist. This whole concept was, I had a blog post that I ended up not finishing, that was just like weird chemical items and kind of a bit of a system for making them yourself, but it didn't really pan out. I didn't really like the idea that you would be spending more effort on making these items in a lab rather than going out and either finding someone that knows how to make them or or finding somewhere and raiding it. So this is kind of the good stuff from that list. So some that fit in a flask, some that fit in a test tube. Very much inspired by there must be universal, absolute adhesive and ultimate solvent. So I do occasionally just completely steal something from D&D. We can slam D&D all you like, but I would like to know who came up with the idea of whatever the real version of absolute adhesive is. I can't remember what it's called. Sovereign glue? If that was Gary Gygax, I'm not saying he came up with 100% good ideas, but giving them essentially super glue is a great... It opens up a lot of shenanigans. Roof crawler. Now, I think these are all elements of a roof. Gambrel, mansard, skillion, dush. If there's any architects in the house, help me out. This one, I didn't quite almost take it out, but it was a bit close to the wall-borne. I kind of like that it's a distinction. I quite like when you've got two things that seem quite similar on the surface. So if one of you got a wall-borne character who had a job on top of the walls, and then one of you got a roof crawler, and your job involved working on the roofs, then I quite like that they're kind of similar enough that people might think like, oh yeah, so you two guys are going to get along. And it's like, well, no, we're completely different. The roof crawler, I think, got the short end of the stick. Because you've got things like gutter unclogger and, well, just murderer. So it's kind of like the dark side of the wallborn, if you like. Petty officer. This one I've definitely seen him play at least once. We had a Moss Cabinet agent once, who again I feel like it's obvious what that means to me, but I like that other people would have to interpret it as what is the Moss Cabinet. So I took it that they were like protecting moss on walls, and like they were using the moss brush to dust it off and make sure it's all intact, make sure nobody's messing with it. Tardy clocksman, a clock correcting arm. When I asked about weird jobs, the two that really came out on top as ones that I heard about a lot were, they're not really called tardy clocksmen, but there was some kind of job that involved checking clocks. And the other one is in the civil butler. When we get to that, I'll point out the other number one common weird job that I got told about. Bread scented candle. Why is that not a thing already? Like I've spent a lot of time in my adult life in candle shops, smelling different types of candle and choosing between them. And this isn't a stand-up routine. I'm not saying this as if I'm getting dragged around there by my partner. Like I'm on board with smelling different things and choosing which one I want in my house. It's a good afternoon well spent for me. But I've never come across bread, and yet people say bread is like fresh bread is like the best smell in the world. So bread candle, make it happen. Bailed prisoner. Yeah, the names I don't know. I like that when you get out, all the things that you've got waiting for you are a bit crap. So, you get out and you get a flask of cold stewed tea. That's got to be up there for the most useless item in this list. If we see anything more useless than a flask of cold stewed tea, like earlier on I was complaining about the newspaper intern getting a flask of very strong coffee, but at least you can drink the strong coffee to stay awake, or you can throw it on someone because it's presumably hot. But cold tea? And we've got gruel again. Take a shot every time you see gruel. Street performer. I really like this poster. Alec did send me the image of this because I don't know how he does it, but he's obviously drawn the image and then plastered it onto this. So he sent me the regular image. So I will try and dig that out and see if that's something that's fit for sharing. I love the little puppet. Although I would argue the text clearly states a sad looking puppet, and this puppet looks pretty happy. So come on, Alec. All I do is praise him. From now on, I'm just pointing out all the flaws in the artwork now. That's what I'm doing. Especially now he's working on other projects. He's going to be too big to like listen to me anymore. So all I'm going to do is slam him now and be bitter. Yeah. Corpse Collector. So another item that I had to go through and remove because it was in there too often was wheelbarrow. Too many wheelbarrows. It's going to be the name of my autobiography. And it's... yeah, wheelbarrows, I don't know why I was fascinated with them. I think anything that would feel out of place in D&D normally. And I know that wheelbarrows aren't some new modern technology. But somehow in my head I think of wheelbarrows as like a new thing. And yeah, I mean, surely in like medieval times you would need a wheelbarrow even more than you would need it in, say, the 1920s or 1930s. But anything that I think would feel out of place in D&D, like classic medieval Renaissance D&D, I just went big on it here. So there's lots of tins of food and there's lots of wheelbarrows and snooker cues. This one, yeah, you're likely to just get something crap. Corpse warts. And this is people ask me about whether everything was balanced so that the low rolls got better items. Well, obviously not here. I think for pounds, I didn't bother really because difference between £6 and £1 isn't going to make or break your character. So yeah, if you roll £1, you also get corpse warts on your face. Great. Oh, grout. There's a lot of grout in this book as well. Grout and gruel. If it's a funny sounding word, it's in there. A barrow full of grout and gruel. CryPTOHISTORIAN, concept by Zachary Cox. Yeah, cheers for this, Zach, because... but I mean, to be fair, I did encourage you. I think I asked you what concept would you want me to write, because this was for his pledge level. He earned the right to get me to write a failed career. And then later on, I actually asked him to write a failed career. So he's in here twice. The only person to appear twice. He's like Phil Collins at Live Aid, appearing at both Philadelphia and London. So in here, you've got one of the nicest little Easter eggs, which might not show because I'm using a very low quality PDF, but this little book here looks familiar to anyone. And it's not actually the same layout as the front cover of the real Electric Bastionland, so this must be from not just our history, but a different history. Yeah, there's lots of weird stuff in here, and I was about to start saying like, oh, you know, Zach gave me the hardest one to write because it's such a weird thing, this idea of someone that studies false histories. And in fact, Patrick, seeing as you're here, you can have another bit of credit because he actually pointed me towards your blog and he said, this CryPTOHISTORIAN idea, he was like, oh, Patrick wrote something about that in his... Patrick will be able to tell me exactly what it was now in the chat, but it was something like people who studied histories that never were or something in one of his blog posts. Does that ring a bell, Patrick? But he kind of pointed me there and I was careful not to look at it because I didn't want to just steal Patrick's ideas quite so readily. But yeah, this is definitely inspired by something on False Machine, Patrick Stewart's blog. And yeah, there's lots of weird stuff in this one. Wait, hang on. Retired Racing Hound. That's strong. I'm on board with that. Counterfeit Taxidermist. This is one where you sometimes, do you ever look at an acronym and think they came up with that name before they thought about what they were doing? And yeah, the Counterfeit Taxidermist was, when I was coming up with names for the careers and concepts, I think I had the word counterfeit and the word taxidermy, and I probably just put them together. And then, you know, it turns out this is a real thing anyway, like the idea of making fake mythological beasts. And yeah, you basically just get one of them. So you might get a walking trout, or a claw squid, or a frog monkey. The implication being that these aren't real. But I think I'm saying now, canonically, these are real animals. You've just made counterfeit versions of them. Because I guess you can't make a counterfeit of something that doesn't exist. Like if I make a new type of, I don't know, if I make a new type of coin, that's not really counterfeit, but counterfeit is an imitation of something that's real. So canonically, yeah, walking trout are a real thing in Electric Bastionland. PIE-SMUGGLER. Do I need to explain these names? We're back in my area of expertise now. I couldn't tell you much about construction or architecture or debating fallacies, but I can tell you about pastry. So we've got shore crumb for short crust pastry, filou for phyllo pastry, flake for flaky pastry, and socré for socré. What's that? Don't know. Feels like there should be a choux pastry reference in here. I've no idea what socré is. Some kind of pastry I'm not familiar with. Alchemagician says, I had one of my players kill the big boss with his tiny pie bomb. Yeah, I mean, you know, it says tiny bomb, but a D8 blast is pretty significant. I went to great lengths with the combinations here of what's in the pie. That's where a lot of the work went. And, oh, we're at number 60. So let me just check if we had any questions in the meantime. Yeah, the tagline on the street performer, hated by many. Let's see. Fizding assures me that these are construction terms on the roof crawler. I'll take your word for it. And yeah, apparently, Patrick tells me on the puppet, there's a woman in the bottom left hating on the puppet. Yeah, look at this, giving side eye to the puppet. Oh, you're not seeing what I'm seeing. You're missing out. Let me hide myself. So yeah, this woman here giving side eye to the puppet. This must mean that Patrick is playing along at home with his own book if he saw that. With my mug hiding it. So let's do it. How are we doing for time? 38. Oh, we are slipping. Right. We need to pick up the pace if we're going to get through another 40 tonight. Council Runner. From Valuable Kisses from Gods, Mermaids and Princesses. I didn't see this at first. It's got slightly unfortunate connotations, but I'll allow it. Yeah, orangutan. It's great. Boxhead man, and yeah, you get some weird things, like you might know how to run really quickly, or you might have some code words. Life Servant. Oh, I do like this one. I'm not going to talk about it for long, but I do like it. Centerville, Stilton, Maudledge, Lakey. No idea what these names are all about. I like that you get a back scratcher, and the best part of the job. There's one of these that I like. Yeah, the two-person saw. I've not seen that in play yet, but the sort of, it's one of these things that I don't know if it exists outside of cartoons when I was growing up, like two lumberjacks with one big saw going like that. Like, is this even a thing? Well, it's in there. A bag of flour, great. Amateur Dramatist. At one point this was called the Ham Thespian, but I thought that was a little bit too far. An amateur dramatist is already kind of like a pun, so Ham Thespian was just a little bit too far. The names must be from something. Oh, okay. Nell Breen is after a fantastic actor and director and writer. Yeah, Grand Ham instead of Grand Dam, that would have been good. Nell Breen is Neil Breen. Yep, a Neil Breen reference right there in your book. I've got no idea what the rest are. Then there must be actors. Let's see. I don't know. Maybe it's like the cast of a Neil Breen film. Maybe I looked up the other actors from Double Down or Fateful Findings. The only two Neil Breen films that matter, I would say. Porky Shedham, owner of Paradiso Park in Bastion. That's a strong name. I think Paradiso Park was in the original book as well. It was in in Hope's End, the sort of example town. I think there was the sort of the equivalent of like Pleasure Beach theme park was Paradiso Park. Yeah, you get some stupid acting abilities and a flask of dry ice. Or a ventriloquist dummy, that's good. Wilderness Recluse. I like this one a lot. I really had to fight the urge to just make Bastion into a full-on Warhammer 40k Spire city. Like a hive city, rather. You know, like that sort of classic Necromunda image where you got the mountain-like city. But here, I think it works. It looks good. I like that you can get a peat bomb, which is just a bomb, but it's smelly. And yeah, this one kind of is what it is. Benson, Looper, Match, Broil. No idea. And then the iconic, the rat catcher of Bastionland. This is the one that I've used to kind of, if I have to show a career to somebody to help them understand it. This one sort of became my go-to just because everyone remembers the rat catcher from Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay, but they don't. I can only speak for myself, but when I think about it, I don't remember the fact that the rat catcher had move silently or whatever weird, stupid skills it had, because the skills in that system were a mess. They don't remember that its advances were +5 to initiative or whatever. If you ask someone about a rat catcher, what they will tell you about is the small but vicious dog. And here we've got six alternatives to your small but vicious dog. So the most obvious are your cute but violent otter, a large but pacifist seagull. I don't think I've ever encountered a pacifist seagull in my life. They're always belligerent. A friend urchin, which is the one that Alec went for. How nice. Attached to the ship. And one of my, not complaints, one of my issues with this image originally was like, this is clearly an octopus that she's hauling in. Clearly an octopus. But you've got like a squid behind. And to be fair, you know, it is a squid hook. But later on, where is it? Where is it? Ah yeah, when you get your prototype cephalopole, if you are a thoroughly committed squidbagger, it's a +D8 against anything with tentacles. So it would work just as well against octopi, octopuses. And yeah, Mr. Dick, I'm pretty happy with that as a mock loan shark. Mock shark loan shark. Yeah, pets and animals, I did it in Into the Odd, and whenever they came up, people really liked it. I did used to kill them quite often. I will confess, I probably used to take too much pleasure in making players feel bad by killing the dog. But they would just put the dog in dangerous places, and I'm probably a bit more animal friendly now. But yeah, I wanted to make sure there were lots of them in there. Exposed imposter. Again, this image, like, what's he doing? Like, he didn't need to create 6 such interesting characters, even aside from the main character. But, you know, you pick any one of these characters for your next NPC, and you're ready to go. Are these famous imposters from history? I don't think so. Critic-In-Hiding. These are food critics, I think. Gilran is Giles Corran. Rowena is... Oh, you know, I wrote these, and it's so hard for me to remember what they are. But these are, I think, restaurant critics based in the UK. And yeah, Critic-In-Hiding. Orphanages just crop up quite a lot. It just tells you something about the sort of assumed setting that there are orphanages in there a lot. But I did tone it down because I didn't want it to be too much of a downer that they were just everywhere. So yeah, but you could be an orphanage critic. Not an inspector, but an orphanage critic. And Electric Viola is... We said about the tea being the stewed pot of tea being the worst thing to get, but Electric Viola is pretty strong. Small Town Refugee. I really like this one a lot. And I think it tells you, because it tells you something about Deep Country and Bastion, that you came to... Horse Addict makes me laugh every time. So the town that you came from, they only ate horse, but now you can't live without it. If you go a day without drinking horse milk or eating horse meat, then you are deprived. That one took a lot of rewriting, believe it or not. It was worded kind of weird originally, and I think originally it was just the horse meat, or it was like a horse product. But I wanted to make it clear that, yeah, you can just drink the horse milk. You don't have to kill a horse, because some people find that very objectionable. Whereas I think horse milk, you can probably get ethical horse milk in Bastion from a free-range dairy stable. Pig soul. You can sort of communicate with pigs. Great. And yeah, Lucky Frog, just a frog. And there's a wheelbarrow. Spot the wheelbarrow. Spot the conker. Listen, why did I write so many of these? They're all the same. I've got no original ideas. Frogs, conkers, wheelbarrows. Yeah. Paid fighter. So, this is another one that I often point people to when they're asking about the career system, and I'm like, well, yeah, it's your failed career, but look at some of the things you might get. So you might get a power saw. D10. Jesus. I didn't realise it was that good. But yeah, it stutters on a 1 to 10. Power saw fencing is a thing in Bastion. That's a thing you can go to. You can go to ice jousting. So you get ice skates and a mini lance. I've not seen ice jousting come up. It's probably cruel that I put these things out there, and I'm just like, yeah, you deal with it when it comes up. Bear fighting in a bristle suit. This is one of the coolest ones. I really would like to see this one. I don't think I've ever been in a game that had this one. A semi-trained attack snake. I put too many good ideas in this one career. There's too many in there. Canal Nomad. So names here are Grand Union Canal. And then these are other canal-based names. I'm not down on my canals as much as I should be. But again, I wanted to have a focus on canals as a very modern form of transport. Great Extenser was in a blog post that I did about wizards. The idea of what would a wizard look like in Interyard, and they were basically just like people that had enough weird stuff happen to them that they have essentially appeared like some kind of weird alien wizard. So yeah, he's a hook-handed red-masked maniac who can age or vivify objects with a touch. Water whistle. If blown underwater, this repels any marine life. Or a bucket. So you're getting both ends of the spectrum here. And yeah, let's get any questions out the way while we're speeding through these. I think we're pretty much up to speed. Really. Yeah, Venice style borough. I actually did I've said before about doing things based on the Tomb of Horrors. I did something that was very loosely based on the structure of Tomb of Horrors called the Canal of Horrors, where it was the sort of the map of Tomb of Horrors, but it was waterways, and I got rid of pretty much all the content. And I've run a few people through that, and it's a nice little adventure. And Great Extenser is actually in that. He's like, you steal a boat, and he's basically locked in the bottom of the boat. Living Experiment. So this guy here is this bonehead. I've had many failed attempts to do a kind of sci-fi game. And a stupid idea that I had in there was these boneheads. It's like they don't remember why, but they're like people, but they're kind of like immortal now, and they've got skulls for heads, but they don't remember why. So they're just like, oh yeah, well, way back one of my ancestors, he must have just thought, well, I'd like to have a skull for a head, and doing it made them immortal, but they just don't know why. And that was very much the tone for this stupid sci-fi game. Went through a number of names. One of them was Die Bonehead Die. One of them was what was it called? It kind of merged a little bit into the kind of Hellspace Arcbound idea thing that I did. There's a lot of failed sci-fi stuff on my blog. But yeah, one of the things here is you can get a functioning metal skull for a head, but not the immortality. And originally it was like Experiment Survivor, I think, but I think Living Experiment just made it sound a little bit less traumatic. Fashionista, one of my favourite ones. One of the few careers that has a universal special rule here. No matter what you roll, you get this special rule that you've got to dress with. If you are deprived if you dress without making a statement. Sensation, remark, wave, mode. I wrote about this before I was aware of what like drag race was, but these sound like drag names to me, which isn't a bad thing. It kind of fits the bill. And yeah, the Lion Council. So there's the Lion Council here. So they're just lions. And there is the Bear. What are they called? Like the Bear Senate or something? Bear Parliament later on. And again, I noticed that there was this repeated idea of like a group of just regular animals that seem to have some kind of office, some kind of position of power. And I thought about taking it out, and again I was like, no, let's leave it in, because if you get them both, then maybe you can deal with the conflict between the Lion Council and the Bear Parliament. Plus, I didn't want to write another thing because I'd already written so many things. And yeah, I like the useless items. So I've had somebody roll this before, Impractical Weapons rather, and they had the hand scorcher, superheating metal rod, requires a turn to heat up. I'm basically imagining like hair straighteners or hair curlers, like a curling iron, I think is the word I'm after. And they had that it made lots of noise when you move their outfit, so you can make yourself quite unpopular in the group. Human Flotsam, again, I'm a big fan of the name. I'm a big fan of the frog sat on her head. I like this piece, even though it's quite stark and empty. It's got a lot of character in with very little here. And yeah, just lots of weird. It really raises more questions than answers here. So you were born in an industrial waste pool to no mother. And yeah, the brick in a sack. That's the level we've got to with weapons now. Master Blender. The names here are based on blended whiskies. So Bell's, Johnny Walker, Grouse, Famous Grouse, and Monkey Shoulder. And again, there's a lot going on in this image here. I'm just going to let you look at it. But I wanted to make it clear that it's not just a case of you are an alcohol blender. You are like a whiskey blender. It's much like the chimney sweep in that sense, where there's an obvious one to go for, which is that you're blending whiskey or rum in this case. But I think it's much better if you are a pickle brine blender or a cat food blender. So yeah, it's a real crime here that I didn't specify the gum flavouring. So you've got a vial of gum flavouring. I would like to think that the first thing the conductor would ask the player is, what flavour is your gum that you've got? Public nuisance. So this is kind of like a lump. I kind of lumped together a bunch of different careers that weren't quite big enough for a career themselves. So I wanted like some kind of train spotter thing, because I'm fascinated by the idea of train spotting. It feels like something that maybe it doesn't exist anymore. I don't know. But whenever I used to see, it's a massive stereotype, but it's kind of true. I can say this as somebody that writes role-playing games. I'm allowed to poke a little fun at train spotters. I think we're kind of on the similar pegging here. But I love seeing people that are enthusiastic about something that I don't understand and that seems ridiculous and is likely to get you laughed at by people, but they are just unbridled enthusiasm for it. And seeing usually two people together on a railway platform copying down numbers from a train and talking about when certain trains are coming in and what they've seen, it makes no sense to me at all, but I just love that exists as a phenomenon that has caught on with people. So making it a tram spotter just makes it a little bit more urban. And yeah, they're just jobs that would piss people off. So are you an etiquette enthusiast? You know, bound to make you some enemies. Are you just a general busybody? Are you a vermin nurturer? Are you the reason why vermin feed? So you're like feeding the pigeons while everyone else is trying to get rid of them. But you do get a redeeming feature, just so you're not completely abandoned by society. Yeah, Fizding getting some warbly audio. I'm very sorry about that, but it sounds like that could be at your end. Park Steward. The scene. I'm just taking in the scene here, with just the lamps knocked down, but people are still in the park, even though it's all gone wrong. So I liked the idea of having, again, like a kind of, I had an alternative to the druid in the herbalist. So that's like what an urban druid would look like. What would an urban modern ranger look like? I guess it would be a park ranger. So I changed it to park steward, just I think park ranger is a little bit too loaded. And yeah, something went wrong with your park, so you might get some barbed wire because it turned into a war zone. And one of the items here that I really like is a bee can. Compressed beehive in a can produces a small amount of honey, or can be broken to release an angry bee swarm. Civic Butler. Where is it? Oh, God. I've pointed out, I shouldn't be doing this. I should be glossing over the little things I've just noticed, but I had a tardy clocksman that had like an adjusting, a hand for adjusting clocks, and then here we've got a clock hander. That was your morning job. Take a collapsible adjustment pole with grabbing end. So we could have two players with separate careers who were both responsible for making sure clocks were correct. I'm going to own that mistake, and I'm going to say that it's a feature, not a bug, again. I'm going to say that they are, if you get those two characters, they will have very different ideas about what it means to keep clocks on time. But one of the, I said about there being a very popular weird career in here, and one of them is the idea of like a knocker-upper that would go around and knock on for people before there were alarm clocks. So you'd say, I want my morning wake-up knock at 6 p.m. at 6 a.m. And yeah, so that's a wake-up caller with a knocking morning pole with knocking end. So yeah, it took me ages to realise on this one. You've got someone hidden back here about to assassinate, presumably, your employer. Oh, and I didn't even see this. I didn't see this dead body here. And you're just chilling out. Okay, maybe that's why you're no longer a civic butler. I guess this is perhaps a reference to like the whole murder mystery, like the butler did it sort of thing. Estate Squire, awesome art. I love this as a different sort of idea. The names here, I'll give you a bit of time to see if anyone can get what these names are. Faruka, Mole, Callus, Lipoma. And it's to do with being a squire. So yeah, it's the good thing about Deep Country is you can go as close or back in time as you want. So sometimes it's like a bit medieval. And yeah, here you're like, you served aristocracy. And but you have a special relationship with your master here. So it could be that they're a horse. It could be that you've never met them and you get your orders by radio. So you start with a relationship. Even though you've got your debt holder, you also have your master. And you were sent to Bastion for a job. And here we go, Barrow Bomb. Take a shot for Barrow. Is there any gruel in here? Any grout? No. Brush. There are lots of brushes and lots of horse references as well. No takers for these names. Okay, so Squire. When I think about somebody being a squire, I think of the old Disney Sword and Stone cartoon. And he was called Wart. Arthur was called Wart by his stepfather, I think. Uncle. I can't remember what his relationship was to the sort of older man. And these are all types of things that are like warts. Faruka, a mole, a callus, and a lipoma are all skin things. And it's not a good thing to do when you decide to do this and you go to Google and you type in looking for like skin conditions, because you get very, very unpleasant images. Machine Whisperer, lots of colour. This is where like 90% of the colour went on this one page. So again, this was kind of like I don't want to say it's like an urban cleric, but machines are kind of presented as a little bit like they could be like little gods or little demons or very powerful beings, and you kind of had a way with them. So you didn't worship them, but you know, you had a way with the machines. Oh, yo-yo. Yeah, is this the first yo-yo on the item list? That's a strong choice for an item. Agricultural Saboteur. Again, that rolls off the tongue quite nicely. You could start with a football-sized alien bird egg. Unfertilized, unfortunately. Why did I put unfertilized? That's lame. But I guess, I don't know, you'd have to find an alien bird to help hatch it. I hereby give you permission, if you want to scrub out this unfertilized bit and say that you just have shared ownership of a fertilized alien bird egg, you can do that. But only if you've watched this video. Oh, and the names here took far too long to make them all alliterative and make them fit. I like Fromage and Frey Farms because it's just really lame. I don't know why it makes me laugh so much, but I'm very easily pleased. Right, we've done another 10. Oh, it's 10 o'clock. Can we do 20 in like 10 minutes? Yeah, because there's a lot that I can't talk about because they were written by Arnold Kemp and some other guy. So I'm gonna breeze through these. Although they do get more interesting as I go on, but I'm going to be quick because next week I want to talk about something different. Animal Vassal. WAML. The WAML is it's Black Country slang. So if you're not from the UK, the Black Country is a part of the Midlands in the UK, so named for its industry. And it's around sort of Wolverhampton. And I do not have a Black Country accent, I am pleased to say. But some members of my family do, and I could probably slip into one a little bit. But the WAML is what you would call the dog. So you'd say the WAML's making a racket. You'd say that the dog's, being noisy. Yeah, more Black Country slang in the next book. It's going to be all West Midlands UK dialect. See, I'm trying to be quick, but I love a big old evil snake. And originally this was a mummified horse, but there were too many horses. I already did a big blog post about 100 horses, and there's so many horses in it because I think horses are funny for some reason. But yeah, we made it a platypus. And the Bear Parliament, here we go. We spoke about them a little bit earlier. A Massivist, a Massive Country. This piece of art, I was unsure because they are clearly too big. They are clearly the one thing that it says here. Everything is big in Massive Country. You stop growing just below the ceiling. Alec, this is not just below the ceiling. This person is clearly taller than the ceiling, but I'll let it stand. I'll allow it. I was basically imagining like kind of a giant in the kind of Hagrid sense, maybe. But he took it a bit more literally, and yeah, I'll take it. You might be a giant. Divine Prodigy. Bless this mess. I like it, and it's not often you get a good view of the city, but I like that you can't see too much. The cynic in you might be saying, well, he's not drawn in all this detail because that would be a lot of work for something that wouldn't be seen. And maybe that's the case, but also it's been clearly stated that in Bastion, you can't just climb up a tower and like do a map because it's too big and the city changes too much. Fizding says platypus here and not with a counterfeit taxidermist. Well, yeah, I think platypus. The reason why people thought platypus was fake in Europe when they brought one back, as far as I'm aware the story goes, was because it looks like a load of different animals shoved together. But it's Bastion, everything is here, so we've already got platypuses swimming through the canals and nestling down in sort of piles of old newspapers. So yeah, it wouldn't work with platypuses, I'm afraid. There's something in here that I considered taking out. A chastity belt. Ooh, I don't know. Chastity belt, will that look good in 10 years? I don't know. It's a weird thing, and I thought, but it's just an odd thing that's in there. And I'm going to move on from this right now. Good dog. Some people go mad for this. Believe it or not, I am not like a dog owner, and I'm not. I like other people's dogs very much. I'm glad that I don't have to pick their shit up off the ground. But I appreciate that to many people dogs are a big deal, and this will be making them go through some kind of crazed gibberish talking about good dogs and stuff. So yeah, good dog. This was from a thing that Arnold Kemp wrote, and Arnie is obviously a little nod to him. And yeah, there's a lot of weird deprived rules here, and potentially the saddest career in here. So yeah, your master went to work and never came back. So if you're ever alone, you are deprived. You won't recover HP unless you've got someone with you. They got an even better dog. So if someone takes your collar away, you're deprived. They banished you for a crime that you didn't commit. So if you are held in a cell or in a court, you are deprived from the trauma. Maybe your master died of old age, so you're deprived when you're in a hospital or a nursing home. Yeah, it's tragic, this one. Let's move on. Worthless graduate. This is less tragic. What is there to say about this one? The names here are something to do with diplomas. Tut is like slang for like getting a... Oh, I don't need to explain how degrees work in the UK, but like if you get a 2-2, which is like a lower second level degree, a 2-2 is sometimes called a Desmond Tutu because it's a 2-2. So the tut there is like a little reference to that. Befloma, that's something to do with like some kind of diploma that I can't remember, some kind of qualification. But yeah, you're going to get a shitty degree that doesn't mean anything anymore. Emulsification studies. You know what will happen when any two liquids are mixed. Great. Theoretical economics. Bankers hate you. The good thing about writing this so long ago and writing so much of it is I have forgotten so much of it. So if I seem like an idiot for laughing at my own jokes that I've written in here, it's because I've forgotten them. So yeah, be forgiving. Alternative groomer. This art, I'm a big fan. I like the cannon pointing into the city. There's a reference to that somewhere in a blog post, but I suspect that's a coincidence. Avant-gardesman. So one of the things that when I talked about the cool things you might get as you're starting equipment, yes, you might get a chainsaw, you might get a flamethrower, you also might get a somewhat trained attack bear. Although it's kind of unlikely because this is like a weird... These high numbers are pretty rare to get on the normal system. Right, we're going to smash through these last ones. Factory retainer. This was originally like factory orphan or something, but it was too tragic. So yeah, you're like a retainer. So your family left you to the factory for whatever reason. And there's got to be some useful stuff here. Is there anything that can beat the flask of stewed tea for bad equipment? Broken biscuits. Patrick Stewart. I'm sure he can, well, it's too late. He can't tell me now. But I know as someone who having shared the horrors of working in the biscuit industry, I'm sure he doesn't like hearing about a biscuit factories here. Despite the fact that I imagine broken biscuits were a perk of the job. But that's best left in the past. I'm hoping Patrick will forgive me for bringing that up. But yeah, you got an empty paint can maybe, so that's good. A fake pound coin, unconvincing. Again, I still think that's more useful than a flask of tea. Grief diplomat. You had to bring bad news to people. Downscaling poorhouses. Comforting survivors. Take a council joke book. Your speciality was spelling correction, so you'd be sent somewhere to like correct someone on their spelling, and you take a dictionary so you can prove it to them. Lone Stargazer. Fantastic piece here. I love this whole thing. Anything that has like space on it, I think just looked great in this kind of black and white style, and just the brightness of the stars that are coming through. There's no way that the stars would look that good. I've gone to great lengths to talk about how big a city Bastion is, and anybody that lives in a big city will know it's rubbish for stargazing. And But for some reason, in Bastion, that's not the case. So it just proves that Bastionland space is not like our space. That is something that you should definitely remember. So hypothetically, if we were to ever journey to the living stars in Bastionland, I would not expect them to behave like regular stars, because they're not. Because as you can see here, they look very different to how our stars would look in a big, electric, well-lit city. Names here. Stargazer. There's the blog Stargazer's World by Michael Wolff. And Michael Wolff was one of the first guys to do the playtesting with me on Into the Odd, way back. Through like an IRC channel. I arranged the very first games of Into the Odd. And Michael Wolff was there from day one. So Michael, if you're looking at this, you can see you've got a nice little reference there. Tunnel Stray. Yeah, it's a little bit like the Experiment Survivor, but... Sorry, the Living Experiment, but you're just weird instead. So you're kind of like a bit of a golem kind of thing. So you got stuck down underground too long. And, yeah, you get some kind of horrible disorders. Nice. Body Jockey. Do I need to explain the whole Man Rider thing? This was back in the Google Plus days, which I know I talk about too much. There was a series of irregular games with ongoing characters, and Jez Gordon had a character that was a goblin that I think had like terrible stats, but they had a human that they would ride around, and eventually through various mutations, I think they kind of like, I don't know the full story, but look at the story of Man Rider, if you can find it anywhere, the goblin. But I kind of stole that idea a little bit for this, and I was like, yeah, okay, so you're a little weird thing that rides in a body, but you are hidden. So again, not doing a good job here of staying hidden. Yeah, Man Rider might be the risky click of the day, Fizding says. Yeah, maybe find Jez Gordon on Twitter. I think his Twitter is Giblet Blizzard or something to that effect. But Jez Gordon, the RPG artist and writer of the upcoming Feral RPG. If you ever encounter him, you can ask him about Man Rider, and I'm sure he would tell you all about it. Underground Weirdo. So, as a contrast, whereas the Tunnel Stray kind of wandered down into the underground and got stuck down there a bit, so you got tormented and made weird. The Underground Weirdo, you're a native of the underground almost. So I'm kind of like imagining like the mutants that live in the underground of New York in Futurama. So yeah, you might have like a weird obvious mutation, but you have something that makes you human as well. And then the last of the careers written by me, you're only going to get this if you roll 18 for all 3 ability scores, which is incredibly unlikely. So you're probably not going to end up with this career that way. But I did advise at the start that if you've played the game a few times and rolled up a few characters, I would start moving to D100 for your failed career instead, because it means you get weird stuff like this and the additional careers that you're going to see shortly that were written by Patrick and Arnold Kemp. But because in theory you're going to have 18 in your ability scores, you're going to get sliced down into 2. So one of you is going to have 9s across the board, and the other one's going to have mostly 9s, maybe something here where you gain stats for being the elder twin. And I just like the fact that you've got one good twin, one a bit crap one. It's like a less extreme version of the film Twins. And yeah, this big blob here. Are they a blob, or are they just wearing like a blob suit? Who knows? And what's going on? Yeah, I'm not going to get too deep into the art. Right, we're going to smash through these 6 because I don't know. I don't want to talk about the writing too much, because I did this a little bit in the audio commentaries and spoke about like the difference between their writing and mine, and it's kind of plain to see. Especially with Arnold, he went pretty big with the writing. So I'm just going to talk about the art and the general sort of concept. So yeah, the hanging cat here is a particular highlight. and I think Alex said this was his favourite one to work on. I can see why. Exotic food supplier. Again, this seems like such an obvious one. I'm surprised I didn't have it in there myself. But then you've got things like calf suplexer, which is very Arnold, but also exactly the kind of thing that I would have stolen from him. And if we're just confessing up now, because this is my... If I say it out loud, then I can move on with my life and nobody can point it out to me. But if you look, the text under "you get" here is a certain size on all these, and then when you get to the last ones, something went wrong and the text is slightly bigger. So I am aware of this, and I don't know why it happened, but it did. Rithuan asks, do animals wear clothes in Bastion? Well, look, there's a bird wearing a suit here, so I don't know what to tell you. If there's ever a question like that about does this thing happen in Bastion, the answer is probably yes, but some don't. So yes and no. Again, we're getting fancy with the names here. I make fun of Patrick for using fancy words in his writing, but come on, Arnold, this is some wordy stuff here, and you know it's fine because it's slightly out of tone for Bastionland, but it fits in the limitations of being in like a guest career. So I do like it a lot, but it's a bit more poetic than I would normally be. The Tuk Tucker. This was written by Patrick, and there's one thing that I changed. Where is it? There was something about who've you? No, I don't think it was this one. I'm thinking of a different one. Broken Snooker Cue. So Patrick was obviously getting into my style of writing here, and yeah, awesome art as you might expect. The Map Thief is great, and this is like the most Patrick one there is, really. You've got lots of big capital letters, lots of Fanger, and yeah, this is number 100. So they are the failed careers. It took me just over an hour to get through those. I'm aware it was a lot quicker than previous weeks where I went into mega depth in them, but I wanted to get through them because there's a lot more of the book to go through, and the rest of the book now sort of moves around a lot, and it's not there's a bit more I can talk about rather than going into every single failed career. So to give you a little peek where we're going next week, we're going to be looking at the Conductor's Guide, which is how to run the game. So I'm hoping that was useful, and if you did have any questions, now's the time, because in about 30 seconds I'm going to end the stream. Unless there are any questions. I hate to be that person asking to like, comment and subscribe, but I've noticed when I put this up on YouTube I get plenty of views, which is great, and we've gotten slightly fewer viewers on the live stream each time, which isn't a problem because I'm basically using it as kind of like a recording, because I do accept that most of the views on this are going to be on YouTube when I upload it in a couple of days time. But it would be nice to get more people in live just to get some more questions. You could say that this is on me and I should make it more entertaining, and I certainly could try to do that. But instead, just tell people about it, see if you can get more people to come next week. I'm not going to be asking people to subscribe and so on because I don't know if that really does anything. But yeah, if you know anyone that's into RPG design, especially how to run the game, because next week we're going to be talking about all this mess for how to prepare the game, spark tables, how conducting the game, look rolls, and so on. Oh, you couldn't see all that stuff in that. Well, you couldn't see it because you're going to have to come next week. So I'm going to say goodbye for now. I'm going to leave the stream running for just a moment to let the so that we don't get cut off. I think the time's a lot better than it was. We're not suffering on quite the same amount of delays we're used to. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next week.